For this mock exercise, we're going to take a look at another problem on transfer pricing. And this time we're going to take a look at a case called International Woodworking. So let's read the question. Oops. Okay, so this company, Furniture Division of International Woodworking, purchases lumber and makes tables and chairs and other wood furniture. Most of the lumber is purchased from the Portneuf Mill, also a division of International Woodworking. So this is the selling and this is the buying division. So selling and buying division. Okay, now the furniture division proposed a new Danish design chair that will sell for $150. So that's the sales price. The manager wants to purchase the lumber from Portneuf Mill. Production of 800 chairs is planned using capacity in the furniture division that is currently idle. So they have extra capacity. They have they're operating under capacity. Now, the furniture division can buy the lumber from an outside supplier for $60. So this would be the market price for the material. International Woodworkers has a policy that the transfer price should be at variable cost plus allocated fixed cost. So variable cost plus allocated fixed cost is $70, and that's exactly what was transferred over to the furniture division. So that's what makes up that $70. And that happens to be their policy. So looking at the numbers, you'll see that the furniture division, when we add the $70 to it, plus the $75, plus the $10, it looks like the variable cost is $155, which is much higher than the selling cost. So you've got sales price of $150 to give us a loss of $5. Okay? Now, the market value for the raw material is $60. So they have a loss of $10 here. Okay, assume that the Portneuf Mill has idle capacity. So assuming that the selling division has idle capacity and would incur no additional fixed cost to produce the required lumber, would the furniture division buy the lumber for the chairs from the selling division, given the existing transfer pricing policy? Why and why not? So let's take a look. So the answer is, would the furniture division, would the buying division buy the lumber? The answer is no. Okay? No, they would not. Why? Because at the market price of $60 versus the transfer price of $70. In other words, think about it. The buying division will buy it for $60 in the market, but then the transfer price is $70. The furniture division, which is the buying company, would operate at a loss of $10. So they would naturally would have to pay $10 more than they should had they bought it from an outside party. So if I'm looking at it from the buying division's perspective, it doesn't make sense for us to pay $70 when the market price is actually $60. Okay? Now, looking at the second part of the question, says calculate the contribution margin for the company as a whole if the manager decides to buy from Portneuf as able to sell the 800 chairs. So now we're looking at from the company's perspective. So if the furniture division buys from the mill, here's what would happen. First of all, you've got revenue, which is really the price, isn't it? And the price for those chairs is $150 per unit. Variable costs, well, we've got the variable cost from the mill, which is the transfer at 40. Now, why is it only 40? Well, because really fixed cost is irrelevant, isn't it? That's the variable cost. So remember, fixed cost is irrelevant because it's not going to change whether we transfer within or we don't sell that particular unit or the more materials. You've got manufacturing cost. Is 75. You've got selling cost of $10. Those are all variable cost. So you've got contribution margin of $25. Now, the total contribution margin is $25 times 800 units of chairs, right? That was the order. Gives us 20,000. So that would be the overall effect to the company if if the manager of the furniture division decided to buy from the mill. Okay, part C says, let's go back to the question, what is the transfer price policy you would recommend if the mill always has idle capacity? Explain why this transfer policy provides incentive for managers to act in the best interest as a whole. So let's look at that page on your lecture notes that basically says, the guideline says, if you do have idle capacity, then you need to set the minimum transfer price at the variable cost, which is what we call the additional incremental or outlay cost per unit incurred up to the point of transfer. So if I was the selling division, by setting it at variable cost, that means that my contribution margin is 0. So at least I want to sell it for more than the variable cost. Fixed cost is not relevant in this case because it's not going to matter. It's not going to increase. It's not going to change if I sell 1 or 2 or extra more units internally. From the buying division, you want to pay no more than the market price for that particular raw material. So if I was the buying division, if I have to pay it normally at $60, then if I buy it for less than $60, then it's probably a win for me as well, because then I have my variable cost is lower if I purchase internally. So the maximum price is going to be 60 and the minimum is going to be 40. So if they negotiate a price between 60 and 40, then there is a price and there is going to be an increase in profit for the overall company. Okay, so let's take a look at, so that's the theory. So in this case, so to go back to the question, if the mill has excess capacity, then the transfer price minimum should be variable cost, which is the $40, right? So that's the variable cost is 40. Now, if they don't sell it for that, then they obviously, they won't have any profit opportunity to sell the lumber because obviously there's no customer for those lumber, right? The transfer price policy would motivate the furniture division to buy it because it's going to be less than. So this will motivate, this will help the furniture division, right? It will motivate them to buy internally, to purchase internally. Why? Because it is less than the market price of $60. So the range of transfer price, depending on negotiating skills, would be 40 to 60. So if they can negotiate a price somewhere in that range, then it makes sense to actually go ahead and negotiate an internal buy. Okay? Now, Part D says, explain how the idle capacity affects the recommendation in C. Well, if there's no idle capacity, what happens? When we see in the lecture notes, we need to incorporate what we call this opportunity loss. So if the selling division, the mill, does not have any capacity to supply internally, this means that if they're forced to sell to the furniture division, they're going to have to give up their profit that they normally would have generated from selling to the internal customer, to the external customer, their own regular customer. And that profit that they're giving up is this opportunity cost. That's what they're giving up. And it's essentially the contribution margin of the profit given up. In our case, it would be 60 less the 40. That would be the contribution margin that would give up, which is 20. 20 plus variable cost of 40 gets us up to 60. So the answer is, there would be, if there's no idle capacity, so for D, if no idle capacity, then the mill would forego contribution margin from selling to their regular customer. So that would be, so the transfer price would be the variable cost plus the opportunity cost. And the contribution margin would be 60 less the 40, which is 20. So that would be the contribution margin. Opportunity loss would be the contribution margin loss plus the variable cost of 40. We're back to our $60 transfer price. So the range of transfer price will be 60 to 60. There's no range, basically. They got to pay 60. Okay, which is the market price. All right? Thank you.